Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Girivara Dari, Jaya Girivara Dari, Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Naam Sankirtan ki jai, Shri Parvati Jagannath Gautam Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Hare Krishna, today we will be discussing from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, 2 verses 68 and 69. Because Gaura Purnima is coming Friday, so we are thinking of creating that mood by which from various pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we take Adi Leela, 7th chapter, 68th verse. Sanyasiha kara nartana gayana bhavuka sabasange lanakara sankirtana. See, it's synonyms. Sannyasi, the renounced order of life. Haya, accepting. Kara, you do. Nartana gayana, dancing and chanting. Bhavuka, fanatics. Sava, all. Sange, in your company. Lana, accepting them. Kara, you do. Sankirtana, chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Translation, Translation, you are a sannyasi. Why then do you indulge in chanting and dancing, engaging in your Sankirtana movement in the company of fanatics? Purport. This is a challenge by Prakashananda Saraswati to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura writes in his Anubhashya that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is object of Vedanta philosophical research, has very kindly determined who is an appropriate candidate for study of Vedanta philosophy. The first qualification of such a candidate is expressed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Sikshashtaka. Trunadapi sunichena taroriva saishtuna amanina vanadena kirtaniya sada harihi. So this statement indicates that one can hear or speak about Vedanta philosophy through the disciplic succession. One must be very humble and meek, more tolerant than a tree and more humble than the grass. One should not claim respect for himself, but should be prepared to give all respect to others. One must have these qualifications to be eligible to understand Vedic knowledge. Go to 69th verse. Vedanta patana dhyana sannashira dharma taha chadi kene bhavukera karma. Vedanta patana, studying Vedanta philosophy. Dhyana, meditation. sannyashira of a sannyasi, dharma, duties, taha chadi, giving them up, kara, you do, kene, why, bhavu kera, of the fanatics, karma, activities. Translation purpose, which is even Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation: meditation and the study of Vedanta are the sole duties of a sannyasi. Why do you abandon these to dance with fanatics? Purport: as explained in regard to verse 41, Mayavadi philosophy sannyasis do not approve of chanting and dancing. Prakashananda Saraswati, like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, misunderstood Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be a misled young sannyasi, and therefore he asked him why he indulged in the association of fanatics instead of executing the duty of a sannyasi. Om Jnanatimarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gata Mahyam Dadate Swapadantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Uttapada Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanjana Gaurangi Radhe Vrinda Vaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Yavanta Praveshya Mamavacham Mam Prasuptam Sanjeevayati Akila Shakti Dharasudam Nam Anyam Chahasta Charana Shravatagadhin Prana Namo Bhagavate Purushayatmam Namo Shri Krishna 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 Maham Shri Swamitana Namo Shri Krishna 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 Bhaktivedanta Swami Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna Prabhu Mataji, welcome all of you and thank you for joining and keeping up the appointment with Krishna. And today we are taking from Chaitanya Charitamrita 2 verses, Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 7.68 and 69, which and because we took it up as Gaura Katha, because Gaur Purnima is coming, it is coming on Friday 18th. So that is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance day. So let us try to meditate on one of his glorious pastimes for our purification. Trinadapi Sunichena, Tarorapi Sayushna, Kamanina Manadena, Kirtaniya Sada Harihi. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So this is one of the Shistashika prayers by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even while he was staying in the household alive, he inundated the whole world with congregational chanting of the holy names. See, even Mlechas and Yavanas, they were getting transformed into devotees. However, Mayavadis, fruity workers, and non-devotees, they were expert in avoiding Krishna consciousness movement. So the flood of holy name, that could not touch them. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he deeply thought over this. And he expertly devised a master plan to attract all these classes of people. The Lord then passed through Varanasi on the way to Vrindavana. But the Mayavadi sannyasis, no, they still blaspheme him, saying that he is not studying Vedanta Sutra and is interested only in chanting the holy names. So even though his staunch devotees like Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhara, they were very upset at this blasphemy, Mahaprabhu was not at all affected. He simply smiled because he had already decided the course of action. He exhibited Tarorapi Sahishnuna just by tolerating all the blasphemy. So taking compassion upon his pure devotees, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then arranged by his omnipotency, he inspired a Brahmana from within his heart to invite him for a gathering at his home, where all the Mayavadis, sannyasis were also invited. He thus arranged a situation to meet with the sannyasis of Varanasi so that a discussion can take place with them. So thus the all-knowing Lord, in one go, he devised a plan to alleviate the pain in the hearts of his pure devotees, as well as transform the powerful Mayavadis into devotees of Krishna. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to the Brahmana's house, he saw all the Mayavadi sannyasis of Varanasi who were given respectful seats. They were all respectfully seated by the Brahmana there. But as soon as he entered, without waiting for them to offer respects to him, he immediately offered his respects to all of them. Thereby, he exhibited the quality of amanina manadena. That is, to not demand respect from others and respect everyone without reservation. See, there is a very interesting reason why in the verse Trinadapi Sunichena, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says amanina first and manadena next. That is, not expect any respect from others and offer all respects to everyone. So if we follow this sequence, then the desire for expecting respect from others is removed from our heart. That is the first thing will happen. Thereby, our heart becomes pure. And then with this purified heart, when we offer our respects to others, we will offer without any expectation of respect from them. And this makes our offering of respect to others pure. Whereas, if we reverse the sequence, instead of amanina manadena, if we make it manadena amanina, we may pay respect to others, but the expectation for respect will still be there in our heart. I have paid my respect to him, now he has to offer me respect in return. And when they don't reciprocate, then mental concoction, judging tendency, fault finding, anger, and their eternal associates, they take position in our hearts. So after offering the obeisances, the Lord sat near the place where people washed their feet. He exhibited his humility, Trinadapi Sunichena, by doing so. At the same time, he's also teaching all the preachers of the movement that how much ever great a scholarly devotee we may be, our preaching can be fruitful only through our good behavior, like humility and simplicity. The Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is teaching us through his personal example that before we start preaching, it is very important to cultivate the qualities of devotees such as humility, tolerance, no expectation, and respecting everyone. 4 important points. Humility, tolerance, no expectation, and respecting everyone. Unless we do this, our preaching will not be successful. So Lord Gauranga, he washed his feet and sat right there, even though it was not very clean. The Lord knew that though the sannyasis were attracted by his sanity or saintly behavior, they are attracted to the Brahman effulgence more strongly than to the personal form of Lord Shri Krishna, even though he is the source of the Brahman effulgence, right? So upon being seated, the Lord then exhibited his mystic power by manifesting an effulgence as brilliant as the illumination of millions of suns. Thereby, he mesmerized the Mayavadi sannyasis by his mystic power. It is said that Lord Gauranga, in the Kali Yuga, he did not carry the usual weapons like sword, arrows, right, chakra, no, to destroy the miscreants and non-devotees. No, he instead brought his beautiful golden form and the holy name as his weapons. And by these weapons, he conquered all the universes and is still continuing to do so. So by this time, the leader of the sannyasis, Prakashanand Saraswati, he was very much attracted to Lord Gauranga and requested him with great respect to come and sit with them. But the Lord responded again with a deep humility. He said, I belong to the lower order of sannyasis, and therefore I do not deserve to sit with you. However, Prakashanand Saraswati forcefully caught hold of the Lord's hand and seated him with great respect in the midst of the assembly. Now the Lord again instructs us through this that if we are humble by nature and never expect any respect from others and give all respects to everyone, especially to those who blaspheme us, and in this mood chant the holy names lovingly, then automatically even the most envious persons will develop a positive relationship with us. So developing amicable relationship with others depends on our amicable, loving relationship with Krishna and his devotional service. So after making him sit in the midst of the assembly, Prakashana Saraswati asked Mahaprabhu, "You are a sannyasi like us and are living in Varanasi. So why don't you associate with us?" So this is a very significant point for us to note. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was never anxious to either associate with the Mayavadis or defeat them in any debate. He was completely self-satisfied in always chanting the Supreme Lord's holy names and relishing his pastimes. But this made the other Mayavadi sannyasis and their leader Prakashana Saraswati to wonder why he is not associating with them. Mahaprabhu, by his blissful and self-content disposition, he created the anxiety in the hearts of the Mayavadi sannyasis to associate with him. Now Prakashana Saraswati questioned him out of curiosity and concern that being a sannyasi, why is he not associating with other sannyasis? This is the beginning point of their devotional service. That is, their eagerness to associate with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we should also be eager to associate with Chaitanya Prabhu, right? So Srila Prabhupada reveals a very sublime point, very beautifully, about the result of Prakashana Saraswati's respectful dealing towards Mahaprabhu. And in his purport to text 65 in this chapter, he says, the respectful behavior of Prakashana Saraswati towards Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very much to be appreciated. Such behavior is calculated to be Ajnata Sukruti, or pious activities that one executes unknowingly. Thus Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very tactfully gave Prakashana Saraswati an opportunity to advance in Ajnata Sukruti, so that in the future he might actually become a Vaishnava sannyasi. The important lesson we should learn from the mutual interactions between Mahaprabhu and Prakashana Saraswati is that no matter who the other person is or what his qualifications are, we should be respectful in our dealings. Now Prakashana Saraswati questioned Mahaprabhu, "You are a sannyasi. Why then do you indulge in chanting and dancing, engaging in your Sankirtana movement in the company of fanatics?" So this is the verse 7.68 which we are discussing. See, as far as the Mayavadis are concerned, chanting the holy names is considered as the activity of less intelligent and fanatics. And in the process of judging the devotees, they reveal their false prestige and lack of humility. So Srila Prabhupada very nicely quotes from Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, no? Spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada, that the verse Api Sunichena is not only applicable for devotees, it's also necessary, it is a necessary prerequisite for Vedantists also. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says one must be very humble and meek, more tolerant than a tree and more humble than the grass. One should not claim respect for himself, but should be prepared to give all respect to others. One must have all these qualifications to be eligible to understand Vedic knowledge. Now Prakashana Saraswati then asked Mahaprabhu, the next verse, that is 69th verse, is where he asked the questions. Meditation and the study of Vedanta are the sole duties of a sannyasi. So why do we abandon these to dance with fanatics? The Mayavadi sannyasis generally have a mood of one-upmanship, no, against devotees because they study Vedanta Sutra, whereas the devotees stick to chanting Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. The Vedantists do not have any idea that Bhagavatam is the expanded and much more sweeter the rendition of Vedanta Sutra. So as a result, they carry a tinge of pride in their heart, the Mayavadis, even though they are pious by nature because they study the Vedanta Sutra. But in addition to this, they consider devotees as fanatics and sentimentalists. But however, we find throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, It is repeatedly proved that bhakti is fully based on the topmost knowledge and highest level of detachment. Very beautiful verse in Bhagavatam. Tat Shraddadana Munayo Jnana Vairagya Yuktaya Pashyanti Atmani Chatmanam Bhaktya Shruta Grihitaya. The seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Sutra. Now, Srila Prabhupada expands this beautifully in his purport by giving the definition of bhakti very nicely. Please hear this purport, this definition of bhakti. Devotional service, which is based on the foreground of full knowledge, combined with detachment from material association, and which is fixed by oral reception of the Vedanta Shruti, is only perfect method by which the seriously inquisitive student can realize the absolute truth. Such a wonderful definition of bhakti. So it is only a question of misconception on the part of the Mayavadis about the devotees and the path of bhakti. Now, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied to Prakashananda Saraswati, "My dear sir, kindly hear the reason. My spiritual master considered me a fool, and therefore he chastised me. You are a fool," he said. "You are not qualified to study Vedanta philosophy, and therefore you must always chant the holy name of Krishna. This is the essence of all mantras or Vedic hymns." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started replying to the questions of Prakashananda Saraswati. So the importance of spiritual master in our life cannot be overstated. That is why in our Mangalacharana, no, we sing the very first prayer for the Guru. Om Ajnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Srila Prabhupada beautifully writes in his purport to the verse 72nd verse. He says, "Only fools give up the service of the spiritual master and think themselves advanced in spiritual knowledge." In order to check such fools, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself presented the perfect example of how to be a disciple. A spiritual master knows very well how to engage each disciple in a particular duty. But if a disciple, thinking himself more advanced than his spiritual master, gives up his orders and acts independently, he checks his own spiritual progress. Every disciple must consider himself completely unaware of the signs of Krishna and must always be ready to carry out the orders of the spiritual master to become competent in Krishna consciousness. A disciple should always remain a fool before his spiritual master. That's why Srila Prabhupada, in his purport, he quotes Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who says in that one can become perfectly successful in the mission of his life if he exactly acts according to the words he hears from the mouth of his spiritual master. And Srila Prabhupada further says, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he confirms here that by saying that since his spiritual master ordered him only to chant the holy name of Krishna, he always chanted the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra according to this direction. See, so continuing to speak to the Mayavadi sannyasis about the order of his spiritual master, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that after advising him to chant the holy names, Mahaprabhu's spiritual master instructed him about the glories of the holy names. Who was Mahaprabhu's spiritual master? Mahaprabhu's spiritual master, Sripad Ishwarapuri. He told him, simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna, one can obtain freedom from material existence and see the lotus feet of Krishna. Even Srimati Kunti Maharani says this in very beautifully in Bhagavatam 1.8.36. Shranmanti gayanti grananti abhikshnashah smaranti nandanti tavehitam janaha taveva pashyanti achirena tavakam bhava pravaho paramam padambujam. O Krishna, those who continuously hear, chant and repeat your transcendental activities or take pleasure in others doing so, certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death. So realizing Krishna's lotus feet is no mean task. Right? So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inspired the Mayavadi sannyasis over the greatness of the Supreme Lord's holy names. How it gives unlimitedly more bliss than what we can achieve from the realization of the Lord's by impersonal, right? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu further quoted Sripad Ishwar Puri's instructions. Because in this age of Kali, there is no religious principle other than the chanting of the holy names, which is the essence of all Vedic hymns. And this is the purport of all scriptures. So by repeating these statements of his spiritual master, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made sannyasis understand that this process of chanting is not an imaginary or concocted one, but is completely authentic. So the greatness and glories of the holy names are repeatedly stressed in all the Shastras, especially the king of all scriptures, Srimad Bhagavatam. See, there are Shastric and historical evidences, such as the story of Ajamila, who escaped the jaws of death by the Yamadutas came, but he escaped that simply by obviously chanting, by calling out his son's names. There is names of the Lord. Lord Yamaraj himself, who is one of the Mahajanas, instructs his messengers in 6.3.22. He says, devotional service beginning with the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is the ultimate religious principle for the living entity in human society. Even Lord Yamaraj also is telling. So concluding the glorification of the holy names by Lord Yamaraj, Srila Shukadeva Goswami ends his narration of Ajamila's story to Parikshit Maharaj with the beautiful glorification of the holy names in 6.3.31. Tasma Sankirtanam Vishnur Jagan Mangalam Mahasam Mahatam Api Kauravya Vidyak Aikantika Nishkritam. Shukadeva Goswami, he continued, he said, my dear king, the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is able to uproot even the reactions of the greatest sins. Therefore, the chanting of the Sankirtana movement is the most auspicious activity in the entire universe. So please try to understand this so that others will take it seriously. Shukadeva Goswami is telling to Maharaj Parikshit. So there are several such glorifications of the holy names, the entire Bhagavatam. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his discussion with the sannyasis, then reveals these powerful words from Shastras, which his spiritual master instructed him to always keep it within his throat. Hare Nama eva kevalam, kalo nastya eva gatir anyatha. For spiritual progress in this age of Kali, there is no alternative to the holy name of the Lord. So the process of chanting the holy names is very deceptively simple, right? It looks very simple. Its simplicity and ease of access makes one wonder, how can we attain spiritual perfection by such an easy process? But on the contrary, the most merciful Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us the most powerful process of self-realization to the most unqualified souls of Kali Yuga, because he is Mahavadanyaya, the most munificent Lord. So we should feel how fortunate are we, that we have been given an opportunity to engage in this most powerful yet simple, most blissful yet easy, most flexible yet authentic process, even though we are all most unqualified. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then narrated the incident further to the sannyasis. See, after hearing about the glories of the holy names from his spiritual master, Mahaprabhu returned and started chanting as instructed. Now, because of his chanting the holy names in pure ecstasy, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started to experience various ecstatic symptoms like crying, laughing, dancing, singing. Then Mahaprabhu thought something is wrong with this chanting. It has covered his spiritual knowledge. He thought he became mad by chanting. What did he do? He thus ran to his spiritual master and submitted himself at his lotus feet. So at this point, in verse 80, Prabhupada writes a thought-provoking purport. He says, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as an ideal teacher, shows us how a disciple should deal with his spiritual master. Whenever there is a doubt regarding any point, he should refer the matter to his spiritual master for clarification. See, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that while chanting and dancing, he had developed the kind of mad ecstasy that is possible only for a liberated soul. Yet even in his liberated position, he referred everything to his spiritual master whenever there were doubts. So in any condition, even when liberated, we should never think ourselves independent of the spiritual master, but must refer to him as soon as there is some doubt regarding our progressive spiritual life. So this is a very beautiful point worth meditating and practicing in our life. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed us that even in liberated condition, one should refer to the spiritual master for any doubts and clarifications. So what to speak of those of us who are bound? We are bound, conditioned souls. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. This is the instruction of on how a disciple should approach his guru. So when in doubt, Arjuna approached the Supreme Lord Krishna, who acted as his guru. And when he was despondent, Vyasadeva meditated on his guru, Narada Muni. And he instantly appeared to give him translated solution. So whenever we are in difficulty, if we sincerely approach our guru, he will immediately offer a soothing guidance for our ultimate benefit. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu submitted to his spiritual master. He submitted his predicament about his strange experience while chanting. He said, "My dear Lord, what kind of mantra have you given me? I have become mad simply by chanting this Mahamantra. Chanting the holy name is ecstasy, causes me to dance, laugh, cry." Mahaprabhu continues narrating to sannyasis. When my spiritual master heard all this, he smiled and then he began to speak. So Prabhupada writes, very sweet purport, 82nd verse. When a disciple very perfectly makes progress in spiritual life, this gladdens the spiritual master, who then also smiles in ecstasy, thinking how successful my disciple has become. He feels so glad that he smiles as he enjoys the progress of the disciple. Just as a smiling parent enjoys the activities of a child who is trying to stand up or crawl perfectly. See, the analogy is so beautiful. Huh? We are just crawling in our spiritual life, or at least trying to stand. But the spiritual master is such a kind and loving father that he enjoys our attempt for perfection. Srila Prabhupada uses the word perfectly twice in the purport. And he also says, trying to stand up or crawl perfectly. So it is attempt for perfection that gladdens the spiritual master's heart. Not a hodgepodge namesake effort, no. So when we chant, study, or do any service, we may not be expert in the beginning. But when we repeatedly practice it, the desire for perfection arises in our hearts. How? By the grace of Guru and Krishna. And we work hard on our sadhana and seva. We do not wish to settle for anything less than a perfect endeavor. Perfect endeavor means without any ulterior motives. So, excuse me. Perfect endeavor means without any ulterior motives, like desire for appreciation, glorification, wealth, followers, and with only desire to please Guru and Krishna. So in that process, even if the outcome is a failure to the world's view, Guru and Krishna are fully pleased. This is the ultimate success for a sincere disciple. Shripad Ishwaraj Puri, upon hearing of the symptoms of chanting, as explained in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he smiled in ecstasy and said, "It is the nature of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra that anyone who chants it immediately develops his loving ecstasy for Krishna." This statement is so true. When Srila Prabhupada went to the West, he had only Kartal, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Hare Krishna Mahamantra. None of them in the US had an inkling as to what these are. But as soon as they heard the chanting of the Mahamantra in the Tompkins Square Park from the mouth of the pure devotee Srila Prabhupada, automatically, without any inhibition, they all started chanting and dancing in ecstasy. This is the nature of the Mahamantra. And such amazing transformation happens with the purifying force of the holy names. So Shripad Ishwarapuri further said, the conclusion of all revealed scriptures is that one should awaken his dormant love for Godhead, love of Godhead. You are greatly fortunate to have already done so. That's what he's telling Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is said in the Shastras, Smartavya satatam Vishnur, Vismartavyo na jatu chet, Sarve vidhi nishedasyur, Eteoreva kinkaraha. One should always remember Krishna and never forget at any time. All the rules and prohibitions mentioned in the Shastras should be the servants of these two principles. Now, Ishwarapuri was very pleased with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's obedience to his instruction. And the resultant effect of his pure chanting, he then gives his instruction to Mahaprabhu. He said, "My dear child, continue dancing, chanting, and performing Sankirtana in association with devotees. Furthermore, go out and preach the value of chanting Krishna Nama, for by this process, you will be able to deliver all the fallen souls." So until this point, Mahaprabhu narrated his spiritual master's explanation to him about the glories of holy names, the nature of Sankirtana process, and its Shastric evidence. He was telling to the Mayavadi sannyasis. Then he speaks the following beautiful words to them. He says, I firmly believe in these words of my spiritual master, and therefore I always chant the holy name of the Lord alone and in the association of devotees. That holy name of Lord Krishna sometimes causes me to chant, dance, and therefore I chant and dance. Please do not think that I intentionally do it. I do it automatically. See, the purport of these verses 95 and 96 are worth meditating. No? Prabhupada's words are so powerful, and from his personal experience, we get the immense conviction to strictly follow the instructions of spiritual master with firm faith. Prabhupada says, believing in the words of his spiritual master, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced the Sankirtana movement. Just as the present Krishna conscious movement was started with the belief in the words of our spiritual master. Our means Prabhupada is telling. That is, he started talking about Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Wanted to preach, we believed in his words and tried somehow or the other to fulfill them. And now this movement has become successful all over the world. Therefore, the faith in the words of spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a secret of success. The Prabhupada is telling, we believed in the words of our spiritual master and started in a humble way, in a helpless way. But due to the spiritual force of the order of the Supreme Authority, this movement has become successful. See, we are all so fortunate to have been connected to this spiritual movement created by Srila Prabhupada in the parampara of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who himself set the perfect example of a devotee and a disciple. So following in his footsteps, each one of the acharyas in his disciplic succession have set inspiring personal examples for us to follow. So Srila Prabhupada broke open the treasure house of Krishna Bhakti, practiced by all our previous acharyas, and he freely distributed to one and all. Srila Prabhupada inspired us by his personal example with the essential ingredients for success in spiritual life. 5 points are there. 1. Keep firm faith in the words of the spiritual master. 2. Strictly serve the orders of the spiritual master as one's life and soul. 3. Sincerely, seriously, cherish and cheerfully relish and chant the holy names, sing and dance joyfully. 4. Inspire and engage everyone in the congregational chanting of the holy names. 5. Give all the credit to the spiritual master and do not take any credit for oneself. So Srila Prabhupada pours his heart out in this purport. No? He started the movement in such a humble way. In fact, in a helpless way. He had no help from the family, friends, government, business contracts, or any other source. Everybody deserted him. Every time he tried something, he had to face only challenges and failures. But he never lost heart, nor the faith in the words of his spiritual master. He tried, and finally, when the right time arrived, the entire movement grew exponentially. And now, over 50 years, more than 50 years after his departure, still the movement is growing in leaps and bounds all over the world. So in spite of achieving such a magnificent feat, Prabhupada humbly puts the root cause of all his success to the spiritual force of the order of the spiritual authority, his spiritual master's words, without taking any credit for himself. So he is the real Acharya, and we can be so transcendently proud to have come under his shelter, that even if we offer millions of our lifetimes, life service to him, it is not enough to repay the greatest gift of this Sankirtana movement he has bestowed on us. See, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he concluded his explanation to sannyasi by saying that compared to the bliss derived from chanting the holy names, the happiness derived from impersonal Brahman realization is like the water in a calf's hoofprint. So after hearing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the Mayavadi sannyasis, they were moved. Their minds changed. And thus they spoke with pleasing words. See, one unique advantage we have in the human form of life is that we have the power to express our thoughts and emotions through words. See, words are very powerful weapons. That the entire material world is said to be created by the words, Shabda, of the Supreme Lord. We can create a relationship as well as destroy it. So it is said that one who is an expert in speech is always successful. See, my Guru Maharaj would always quote a beautiful shloka from Shastras. Priyavakya pradhanena sarve tushyanti jantavya tasma tadeva vaktavyam vachaneshu kim daridrata. By speaking pleasing words, all the living entities are satisfied. Therefore, always speak pleasingly. Why are you so poor in your speech? So Mahaprabhu showed us this quality in practice in this incident. So till this point, he had not countered the Mayavadi sannyasis on any philosophical argument over or Vedanta Sutra. So by his humble, pleasing demeanor and factual, heartfelt explanation of the potency of the holy names, he conquered the sannyasis' hearts. Generally, impersonalists, they do not appreciate the personal exchanges of love between the devotees and the Lord. So when the Mayavadi sannyasis heard Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that he was also invited for the lunch at the Brahmana's house, they were prepared to corner Mahaprabhu with various questions and defeat his conviction. And this was their original aim. However, the incident turned completely topsy-turvy for them by the costless mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So at the end of the day, it is the purity of our devotion that attracts a living into Krishna consciousness, not our expertise in Shastras alone. So very important to have the feelings of friendship, mercy, and equality. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is teaching us through these incidents. See, the Mayavadi sannyasis, upon being conquered by the gentle and humble nature of Mahaprabhu, they accepted all that Mahaprabhu said about the glories of the holy names, obeying the orders of spiritual master and glories of devotional service. They said, "Dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what you have said is all true. Only one who is favored by fortune attains love of God." See, now they are saying. So after glorifying the process of bhakti, the sannyasis then said, "Dear sir, there is no objection of your being a great devotee of Lord Krishna. Everyone is satisfied with this. But why do you avoid discussion on Vedanta Sutra? What is the fault in it?" So three beautiful points are highlighted here. First, the sannyasis express their acceptance for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu being a devotee of Krishna. So this is another Agyata Shukruti performed by them. Initially, they had objections to Mahaprabhu's Sankirtana movement, but they are now convinced by Mahaprabhu's merciful glance. Second, Mayavadi said that everyone in Varanasi was satisfied with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotional activities of chanting and dancing in Sankirtan. They initially had apprehensions, no? That is a sentimental process done by localized sadhakas. But upon hearing the purity and greatness of the holy names from the lotus mouth of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they could appreciate why everyone is enthusiastically participating in it. Third, sannyasis then come out of curiosity, asked Mahaprabhu, why is he not studying Vedanta Sutra? This question, which they asked out of eagerness, is quite significant. Mayavadis came to the meeting initially with a critical mentality towards Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that he is faking his sannyasa order. But the purity of associating with Mahaprabhu and the subsequent adoration of his character turned their mindset from criticism to appreciation for devotional service. Mahaprabhu teaches an important lesson here to aspiring preachers. See, all these sannyasis, they were scholars in Vedanta and were well renowned in Varanasi Dham. So any normal practicing spiritualist would feel anxious in their presence and would want to impress them with their Vedic knowledge to get their appreciation and recognition. But Mahaprabhu had none of these anxieties before the meeting. Even though he is the knower of the complete Vedanta philosophy, in fact, he is the Vedanta Krit Veda Videva Chaham. He did not straightaway start speaking on the Vedanta Sutra to them. He was extremely humble and meek. He offered them all due respects. He was satisfaction personified and also transcendently blissful. So all this nature of Mahaprabhu attracted the sannyasis towards him automatically. So thus preaching is all about introspecting and focusing on our devotional behavior, achar. And then Krishna will automatically take care of inspiring them by our speech, prachar. So the sannyasis were more or less convinced about the potency of the holy names and bhakti. But they were still puzzled why Mahaprabhu was not studying Vedanta Sutra. So they humbly inquired him for the reason. So after hearing the Mayavadi sannyasis speak in that way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu smiled slightly and said, "My dear sirs, if you don't mind, I can say something to you regarding Vedanta philosophy." Mahaprabhu, the first point is, Mahaprabhu once again captivated the sannyasis by his behavior. Upon their inquiry, first he smiled slightly, as the Lord always fond of doing when someone asks him a question, and on the verge of encouraging a major turning point in their life. Krishna did this to Arjuna, who turned around from a confused and depressed state into an extremely strong-hearted and determined devotee. Narada Muni also smiled upon seeing his disciple Vyasadeva, who was in a despondent state even after having written so many scriptures for the well-being of all generations. So taking compassion upon Vyasadeva, Narada Muni instructed him to compile Srimad Bhagavatam, and it acted as a perfect panacea for Vyasadeva's depression. Here again we see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu smiling gently upon being asked the question of Vedanta, because he knows that what was going to happen to those Mayavadi sannyasis in a short while from them. They were naturally attached to their knowledge of Vedanta. But Mahaprabhu was going to bestow his costless mercy upon them by transforming that attachment towards pure bhakti. The second point is that once again, Mahaprabhu exhibited his uncommon humility by asking for the permission from the sannyasis that if they allow, he can speak a few words about Vedanta. See, this is how we should. So this is once again, melted the hearts of the sannyasis. So in the entire episode, Mahaprabhu again and again is teaching us the same lesson. Humility is an absolute must for devotional service. Without a humble approach, one cannot successfully inject the message of bhakti into the hearts of the listeners. So upon hearing the humble admission of Mahaprabhu, the sannyasis too felt very humbled. The Mayava sannyasi, being eager to hear about the reason why Mahaprabhu is not studying Vedanta Sutra, became excited when he said that with their permission, he can speak a little on Vedanta philosophy. So they responded nicely. Dear Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they said, to tell you the truth, we are greatly pleased to hear words. And furthermore, your bodily features are so pleasing that we feel extraordinarily satisfaction in seeing you. So these words of the Mayavadi sannyasis are so pleasing to hear for anyone, especially a devotee. The sannyasis mentioned two things about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that captivated them. One, the first thing the sannyasis said was that they were greatly pleased to hear the Lord's words, that they want to hear more and more from him. The second thing is that the sannyasis said that his bodily features of Mahaprabhu were so pleasing that they were feeling extraordinary satisfaction by seeing him. Prabhupada says that the reason why Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided to show his costless mercy upon the Mayavadi sannyasis, even though they had no inclination to do bhakti, was because they unknowingly did a few sincere services that attracted the Lord. What are those? 6. 1. Sannyasi's first service was to offer little respect to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he came to meet them. They respectfully received the Lord and gently inquired him various questions. And when Mahaprabhu spoke, they very eagerly and attentively heard him. Third, they were also very appreciative of Lord's humility, his obedience to his spiritual master, and the glories of the holy name. Fourth, they were pious and actually followed the austere rules and regulations of sannyasis. They had some, and fifth is they had some understanding of Vedanta philosophy. They studied Vedanta seriously. 6, they were genuinely attracted to the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's transcendental form and felt extreme satisfaction to take his darshan. So in the Shastra, it is said, with one's materially contaminated senses, one cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his name, form, qualities, or paraphernalia. But if one renders service unto him, the Lord reveals himself. So only by service can one understand the name, form, qualities, etc. of the Supreme Lord. The Mayavadi sannyasis served the Lord in various ways during their meeting with him, and hence they could attract his costless mercy. As a result, they accepted him as Lord Narayana himself. When we accept the Lord Krishna or Lord Gauranga as our dearmost, Lord, no? There is nothing else left in this world for us to achieve. Mahaprabhu explained that Vedanta Sutra being written by Vyasadeva, who is incarnation of Krishna himself, has no defects. One who takes the direct meaning does not get confused. But Shankaracharya had given indirect and roundabout explanation to it, and hence everyone is confused about it. The Mayavadi sannyasis were fully convinced of Mahaprabhu's explanation, and then they requested Mahaprabhu to explain the sutras in terms of their direct meaning. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began giving his direct explanation of the Vedanta Sutra. We take a few points. First was, Mahaprabhu said, Brahman who is greater than the greatest is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is full in 6 opulences. Therefore, he is a reservoir of ultimate truth and absolute knowledge. Mahaprabhu began explaining the direct meaning of Vedanta Sutra with reference to the fact that the Supreme Lord is in full in 6 opulences, namely wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. Therefore, he is called Bhagavan. And this is a direct refutation to the incorrect theory of Mayavadi philosophy that God is formless and without qualities. So it is common sense logic, that no one can possess all opulences, such as beauty, knowledge, wealth, without possessing a form. Second point is, in his original form, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full with transcendental opulences, which are free from the contamination of the material world. Third, in all Vedic literature, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal. See, we have several references in authorized scriptures, right? Vedesh sarver aham eva vedyo, Bhagavad Gita 15.15. Vasudeva parayoga, Vasudeva paragati, 1.2.28 in Bhagavatam. The fourth verse, when we speak of Supreme as impersonal, we deny his spiritual potencies. Logically, if you accept half of the truth, you cannot understand the whole. The difference between devotees and Mayavadis is that devotees accept all 3 stages, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. combined together as the supreme absolute truth. Whereas Mayavadis accept only the impersonal Brahman as the ultimate truth and reject the other stages of realization. The fifth point is, it is only by devotional service, beginning with hearing, Shravanam, that one can approach the Supreme Personality of God. And that is only means to approach him. The 2 points Mahaprabhu highlights in his explanation is that Bhakti is the only process by which one can fully understand the Supreme Absolute Truth. And second, Bhakti begins with the process of hearing the name, glories, and pastimes of God. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued to explain the direct meaning of Vedanta Sutra by delineating 3 main subjects to attain the ultimate goal of life. What are those 3 main subjects? Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. So let us see what is Sambandha. Sambandha means relationship. So to interact with any entity in this world, living or non-living, first we have to establish a relationship. And to establish a relationship, we have to have knowledge of our relationship with that entity. So Prabhupada defines Sambandha very nicely in the purport. Knowledge of these 4 items, namely oneself, the universe, God, and their interrelationship, is called Sambandha Jnana, or knowledge of one's relationship. And this knowledge of our relationship with the Supreme Lord Krishna is revealed in our heart through the process of hearing and chanting. Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Kare Uday. So in order to love someone or something, first of all, one should establish a relationship with them, right? To establish the relationship, one should spend considerable amount of time, because that is the only true relationship which stands the test of time. So in order to develop a relationship with Krishna, in his form of Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and chanting, we should spend considerable amount of time and quality time with them. Once we establish the relationship with Krishna, then we can extend that relationship to everything else and feel connected with them, because Krishna is present in everybody's heart. That is Sambandha. Now, Abhideya. Abhideya means activity in that relationship. Prabhupada defines Abhideya as when one's relationship with the Supreme Lord is established, the next program is to act in that relationship. And that is called Abhideya, or activity in relationship with the Lord. Once the relationship is established with someone, then one has to nurture that relationship through constant service and exchange of love and affection. Only then it will progress. We cannot simply keep saying, I have so much affection for you, I can do anything for you. But when that person needs our help, we avoid them. That will not be the Sambandha. That will not build the Sambandha. So when we become aware of our relationship with Krishna as his eternal servant, we continuously nurture that relationship through service. This is the most important aspect of bhakti. The devotee is so much absorbed in his service that the Lord becomes indebted to him. And this service itself is so joyfully performed, right? And this is the beauty of devotional service. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains about the Abhideya process as, by practicing this regulated devotional service under the direction of the spiritual master, certainly one awakens his dormant love of Godhead. This process is called Abhideya. And Prayojana, that's the third one. Prayojana is the ultimate goal of life. Prabhupada explains, after executing such prescribed duties, when one attains the highest goal of life, love of Godhead, he achieves Prayojana Siddhi, or the fulfillment of his human mission. So, when we render unconditional devotional service, Krishna bestows us with Prema Bhakti. This is the highest goal of life. Prabhupada then explains this point very nicely in connection with how the Mayavadis do not even come to the relationship stage. If one can understand his relationship with Supreme Personality of Godhead and act accordingly, automatically his mission in life is fulfilled. The Mayavadi philosophers miss even the first stage in this self-realization because they have no conception of God's being personal. He is the master of all, and he is the only person who can accept the service of all living entities. But since this knowledge is lacking in Mayavadi philosophy, Mayavadis do not have knowledge even of their relationship with God. They wrongly think that everyone is God or that everyone is equal to God. Therefore, since the real position of the living entity is not clear to them, how can they advance further? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thus concluded his explanation of the Vedanta Sutra in terms of pure devotional service with this beautiful verse, wherein he says, one's relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, activities in terms of that relationship, and the ultimate goal of life to develop love of God, these 3 subjects are explained in every aphorism of the Vedanta Sutra, for they form the culmination of the entire Vedanta philosophy. So the sweetness of devotional service cannot be experienced in any other process. In all the 3 worlds, no. It is an exclusive property of the spiritual world. It is bestowed upon us by the costless mercy of Guru and Krishna. And the most merciful Lord Chaitanya has brought this Krishna Prema to this world out of his unlimited compassion for suffering souls like us. So beyond the most merciful Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada broke open the treasure house of devotional service and let the entire world float in the ocean of pure devotional service. So when all the Mayavadi sannyasis heard the explanation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on the basis of Sambandha, Abhideya and Prayojana, they spoke very humbly. They said, "Dear sir, you are Vedic knowledge personified and are directly Narayana himself. Kindly you excuse us for the offenses we previously committed by criticizing you." So Prabhupada says, the complete path of Bhakti Yoga is based upon the process of becoming humble and submissive. By the grace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all Mayavadi sannyasis were humble and submissive after hearing his explanation of the Vedanta Sutra. And they begged to be pardoned for the offenses they are committed by criticizing the Lord for simply chanting and dancing and not taking part in the study of Vedanta Sutra. So we are propagating the Krishna conscious movement simply, Krishna Prabhupada says, no, we are propagating the Krishna conscious movement simply by following the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We may not be very well versed in Vedanta Sutra and may not understand their meaning, but we follow in the footsteps of the Acharyas because of our study and because of our strictly and obediently following the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is to be understood that we know everything regarding the Vedanta Sutra because we follow them, the Parampara. See, from that moment, when the Mayavadi sannyasis heard the explanation of the Vedanta Sutra from the Lord, their minds changed. And the construction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they too chanted Krishna, Krishna all the time. So Prabhupada says, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches us that those whom preachers meet are almost offenders who are opposed to Krishna consciousness. But it is a preacher's duty to convince them of the Krishna conscious movement and then induce them to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. See, our propagation, Prabhupada says, our propagation of the Sankirtana movement is continuing despite many opponents. And people are taking up this chanting process even in the remote parts of the world. So by inducing the offenders to chant Hare Krishna Mantra, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exemplified the success of Krishna conscious movement. We should follow very respectfully in the footsteps of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And there is no doubt that we shall be successful in our attempts. Prabhupada is really encouraging us, inspiring us. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu excused all the offenses of the Mayavadi sannyasis and very mercifully blessed them with the holy names. After this, all the sannyasis took the Lord into their midst, and thus they took all the meal together. Mahaprabhu conquered all the Mayavadi sannyasis' hearts, and they joyfully invited him to take the meal along with them. Now, Prabhupada notes an important point, which exemplifies the extraordinary mercy of Mahaprabhu and proves why he is Mahavadanyaya. This is one act that is Mahaprabhu's prerogative, based on his transcendental nature, which cannot be imitated. See, previously Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had neither mixed nor talked with Mayavadi sannyasis, but now he took lunch with them. It is to be concluded, Prabhupada says, it is concluded that when Lord Chaitanya induced them to chant Hare Krishna and excused them for their offenses, they were purified. And therefore, there was no objection to taking lunch or Bhagat Prasadam with them. Although Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew that the food had not been offered to the deity. So Prabhupada brings out another very vital instruction. He says, here is an example of how a sannyasi should preach. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Varanasi, he went there alone, not with a big party. Therefore, although he did not have many friends, due to his sound preaching and his victory in arguing with the local sannyasi on the Vedanta philosophy, he became greatly famous in that part of the country. Now just see, Srila Prabhupada traveled alone to the West with no support whatsoever. He was dependent only on Guru and Krishna's mercy. Now, the worldwide movement is expanding every day, offering so many varieties of services to the society. See, currently, as the entire world is suffering from corona calamity, ISKCON Society is braving the situation and distributing free prasadam to millions of people every day and are glorified by the government authorities in all parts of the world. All this is possible only because of the merciful plans of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Plans upon the sincere warriors trying to please his dear devotees, Srila Prabhupada. See, after a few months of stay in Varanasi, though a lot of crowd gathered to hear Mahaprabhu and many Mayavadi sannyasis came to see him, Mahaprabhu left Varanasi and returned to Jagannath Puri. So the final lesson that Mahaprabhu teaches in this pastime is that a devotee, especially a preacher, should keep moving on like a river and never be attached to that place, name, fame, and followers. The situation in Varanasi became so conducive for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he gathered thousands of friends, well-wishers and disciples by his purity. But that purity is further glorified when Lord revealed the last of his opulence, renunciation. He left Varanasi silently. So mostly, though we catch hold of the place, people and position like a leech, and we do not want to let it go. We justified saying that it is only attachment to devotees and service, and hence it is okay. But in reality, that attachment is only to the intoxication of the name, fame, and followers, not to the devotional service. Such attachments dilutes the intensity of our devotional service and drags it towards lower material moods. So, finally, as aspiring devotees, we should follow in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by keeping ourselves detached from the opulences and reciprocations we receive for our services and focus only on pure devotional service, birth after birth, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reveals in his prayer Shishashtakam. Nadhanam najanam na sundaram sundarim kavitam va jagadish kamaye mama janmani janmani ishware bhavatad bhaktirahe tukitvayi. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want a costless devotional service, birth after birth. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Bhagavatam ki jai, Gita Gaura, Hari Hari Bol. Thank you, Guruji Prabhu Mataji, for giving me this opportunity to glorify Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on this Chaitanya Chatam and Gaura Purnima coming up on Friday. So please bless me to be always engaged in his service. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu Mataji. Hare Krishna. If anybody wants to share or any questions, please can do. Otherwise, close it. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Okay, Prabhu, if there is no questions or any share, we can close it. Vancha kalpatra vichakriva sandubhe vichapatidanam pavane vishnu. Hare Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Balaji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Thanks, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you, Hare Krishna.